People should not have to alter themselves to cater to your dysfunctional behaviors. Everyone has had some form of dysfunction in their childhood, and all dysfunction can hold you back. Who you think you are translates to how you behave. So, if I were raised by someone who behaved dysfunctionally, it's natural for me to believe that who they are is dysfunctional, damaged, or even broken. But that's not who they are. That's how they behaved, and there is a difference. If you believe that you're an angry person, for example, you will have outbursts of anger. And if you think that you're a compassionate person, you will demonstrate compassion. But what happens is, when someone in your life shows you how anger works, something doesn't go your way, so you yell until it does. So when you want to get your way, you yell. It's the same thing with stealing. If you see someone steal something to get what they wanted, you learn that one way to get what you want is to just take it. In my case, when I was a child, I had an experience with my father, and his behavior led me to believe that everything else was more important to my father than me. I knew that he loved me. Yeah, I knew he loved me very much, but not as much as that other stuff. You know what I'm saying? So what do you think that did to my self-esteem, my self-worth? I also had childhood experiences that taught me that people don't keep their word. They're unreliable, unpredictable. And so if I want something done, I have to rely on myself, or someone who has consistently over years and years demonstrated that they're reliable. Then I'll trust them. The question that I have for you is, how much dysfunction did you have, and how aware are you of how that dysfunction is holding you back from reaching your fullest potential? Understanding how your past has shaped how you think and how you strategize will help you to become a more successful entrepreneur, a more successful leader, a more impactful parent, a more fulfilled spouse, and an overall happier person. Our early experiences and the relationships that we've had since childhood teach us what other people think of themselves and what other people think of us. It does not teach us who we are. And because our purpose here is to learn who we are and why we were created, those experiences become our first lesson to teach us who we are, our worth, and our value. And who you think you are translates to how you behave. I'm going to say that again. Who you think you are translates to how you behave. Here's an example. I mentioned in the last episode that my father was a general contractor and my parents divorced early, okay? One memory that I have is when my father was scheduled to pick us up one weekend. So I was about 4. My mom had us all dressed up. We're at my grandmother's house. We're surrounded by my cousins, aunts, and uncles. It was back in the day. Everybody lived with my grandmother. And we're bragging about spending the weekend with our dad, okay? We're going to get McDonald's. We're going and spending the weekend away. You know, all of that, right? We're just bragging. We're skipping around, all excited. And as I think back, going to our father's was more than just going to my father's house. We were going to a fantastical, magical place in our heads, like in our childhood heads, okay? So it starts to get later in the day, and something in my gut, I'm 4 years old, something in my gut is telling me something's wrong. So many times before, he said that he was coming, and he didn't. But this time he was supposed to be coming. So I believed that he was coming. Then the phone rang, old school phone. Bring, you could hear it up and down the street. Phone rings, right? And my stomach sunk. I'm like, I knew it. I'm 4 years old. I'm like, I knew it. I knew it. It's him. Maybe he's just running late. Maybe he's running late. My mom comes outside. She tells us he's not coming. I'm crushed. I'm crushed. I'm crushed right now thinking about it. But what I'm saying is, I could not get it out of my head. Was ruminating. What on earth could be more important than coming to get us? You said you were coming. What are you doing? What are you doing? What could be more important? Whatever it was in my 4-year-old mind, whatever it was more important than me. And that was devastating for me. Even though this happened 8,000 years ago, I have to force myself to ask for help because I subconsciously think that people are too busy. That memory created a dysfunctional behavior and belief system, thinking that I am a bother, worth less than whatever else someone has prioritized. Even though that's my issue, I make it other people's issue when I behave defensive and triggered when I don't feel prioritized. How much of your dysfunctional behaviors do you make someone else's problem? Do you overreact at criticism? Do you avoid intimacy? Do you micromanage? Do you avoid confrontation? Are you a people pleaser? People should not have to alter themselves to cater to your dysfunctional behaviors. Until you take responsibility for your behaviors, you will remain stuck. By recognizing these behaviors and where they come from, you can start to take responsibility and make conscious choices that lead to healthier, more fulfilling relationships and more abundant outcomes. It's about breaking free from the past and reclaiming your true self, not defined by old wounds or dysfunctional belief systems. When we talk about self-sabotaging behaviors and being your own worst enemy, you need to understand how your past shaped your present. If you don't know that you're wounded, you'll be walking around all confident that everyone else is the problem and that if they would just figure it out, the world would be a better place. So let's take it from the top, your childhood. It all starts with your primary caregivers, okay? There are 4 primary parenting styles that help us to understand how our early experiences with our parents or caregivers have shaped how we think and how we interact in our relationships. The first parenting style is the optimal one. It's called secure attachment. If you had caregivers who were consistently responsive and available, you likely developed a secure attachment. This means that you feel comfortable with intimacy and independence, and you generally have healthy, trusting relationships. Good for you. The second parenting style is anxious attachment. If you had caregivers that were inconsistent, sometimes they were attentive and other times they were unavailable, you may have developed an anxious attachment style. This often results in a fear of abandonment and a need for constant reassurance. These fears can lead to self-sabotaging behaviors like clinging too tightly, seeking excessive validation, or becoming overly dependent on others, which can push people away. The third parenting style is avoidant attachment. If your caregivers were emotionally distant or unresponsive, you may have learned to rely on yourself and avoid close relationships to protect yourself from rejection. This avoidance style can lead to self-sabotaging behaviors like pushing people away, avoiding intimacy, and being overly self-reliant, which can create a barrier to forming deep, meaningful connections. The fourth is disorganized attachment. If your early experiences were chaotic or frightening, perhaps with caregivers who were abusive or neglectful, you might exhibit a disorganized attachment style. This often results in a mix of both anxious and avoidant behaviors, leading to unpredictable and often tumultuous relationships. These mixed signals from your parents can result in you demonstrating self-sabotaging behaviors like being erratic in your needs and responses, swinging between closeness and distance, which can confuse and alienate others. So other people will think, you're just being distant and erratic, you're so inconsistent, but in actuality, you're demonstrating behaviors that you learned from childhood. Understanding these parenting styles is the first step towards growth and becoming aware of how your experiences affect how you see the world, who you think you are, and how you process your environment today. Do you generally see people as a threat, or do you see them as friends? Do you see challenges as insurmountable, or do you see them as opportunities? All of this translates back to the foundation of how you were raised. In our next episode of this series, we're taking an even deeper dive into the strategies to overcome these self-sabotaging behaviors. Because the person that you are destined to become is the person that you decide to be. And before I go, remember, this is my favorite part, remember this: I love you, and God loves you, and God has a message for you today.